I've never preached this far out in the crowd before. I almost feel like I should go back there with that first shall be last, last shall be first thing. But I've done that before, so I try not to use the same thing twice. In our second reading today, we hear the word discipline used as punishment. Who here likes to be punished? Yeah, Lily and White will probably never be punished, right? Perfect. We'll stay that way. So, I lost my place because of that. Second reading. Yeah, that's important. So, last month when I preached the second reading, I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but that second reading last month, I preached, I rejoice in my sufferings. And then I went on vacation for 2 weeks, right? You would think, great, except first day of vacation, my boiler died. I had to call a plumber to come back home and fix the boiler. It got worse. Second thing, later in the week, excruciating toothache. Had to go to the dentist, go on antibiotics for a week, ended up in a root canal. And in the root canal, I'm going, I rejoice in my sufferings, right? I'm reminded of my own mom. It got worse. The next week, my biggest customer at work had a meltdown, and I had to be on the phone, on emails, conference calls with the factory, the customer, all week long. I feel like I lost my entire second week of vacation to manage that account because it's so important to the company. And through that all, I'm saying I rejoice in my sufferings, right? Then I come back from vacation, top of my walkway, a huge active yellow jacket nest in the ground. I'm like, all right, I've had enough rejoicing in my sufferings. So I'm going to be really careful what I say about the second reading today. But in our gospel, a man walks up to Jesus and says, are only a few saved? Right? Fair question. We'd love to know, are we saved? That's probably his follow-up, right? If it's only a few, well, who is it? And then it becomes a comparison. Like, if he's not in the list, well, why them? Why him? Why her? What about me? I've heard it said that if you ask a Protestant if they're saved, they say yes. If you ask a Catholic if they're saved, they say, I hope so. I think that would be my answer. I hope so. But it all comes down to perseverance. Jesus doesn't answer this question directly. He says you need to persevere. You need to continue to live your life according to God's law. And that's the same for us. It's not enough to just come to Mass every week and check the box and say, I went to Mass. It's not enough to just be a good person. Because what is the definition of a good person? Is it your definition? Is it someone else's definition? We have to live the life that we profess in the profession of faith that we're all about to say. We're going to hear it for this baby at baptism. But we're all part of that. We say it every week, but it becomes rote. We might get used to those words. But that's the life we need to live to get to salvation. So it requires perseverance. You might say it requires discipline. And so I learned that discipline, there's two definitions, right? When I hear discipline, I think punishment after raising children. But not all discipline is punishment. It can be following a regimen. And that's what we do as Catholics, is we follow this regimen. It takes our entire life to achieve salvation. And so that illustration of punishment, which will never happen to Lily, it reminded me of a story of what I did with one of my children about 10 years ago. My son was 16. So I don't think I told this story here, so if I did, bear with me, because it's a good reminder for me that not all discipline is punishment. He did something that ended up with the police coming to my home. Never a good thing, right? My wife came home to the police car in the driveway, so she got to reconcile all of this. Nothing major, nothing long-standing, fortunately. But she knew it wouldn't be good if I come home and I get this story of the police being in my house because of something my son did. So she knew she wouldn't be home when I got home, and he would be home alone. So she called me on my ride home from work to tell me what happened. And so I got to get all my reaction out in the car on the ride home, but it also gave me time to think about what am I going to do. So when I got home, I pretended like I knew nothing. And I waited until my son came to tell me what happened. So I could see the anxiety in him as he was waiting to tell me. And he says, Dad, I got to tell you a story of what happened today. And I never asked him a question. I never reacted, never got angry. And I could see he didn't expect that out of me. He knew better. So as that continued to build, I could see it in his face. Got to the end of the story, still didn't say a word, and I said, okay, so now you need to be punished for this, right? I can't let this go without a punishment. What do you think your punishment should be? Now, he's nowhere near as creative as me with punishments, right? I never do the same thing twice, and I want to make sure it makes an impact that I don't have to do this again. So I try to be as creative as possible. So he does the normal, oh, I can be grounded for a week. Oh, you can take away my allowance. Oh, I won't be able to drive on my learner's permit for a month. Yeah, none of those are going to be good enough. Finally, I looked at him and I said, I think your punishment for this is you're not going to get any punishment. Your punishment was having to tell me. I knew the whole story before you got home. And I could see that overwhelming emotion in him, and he began to cry. And so we hugged each other, right? But it's one of those punishments you can only use once with your kids, right? Because if the punishment is you're not getting punished, it doesn't work a second time. Right? So again, an illustration of punishment or discipline not always being punishment. It's a great illustration for me. I mean, I do this enough to remind me of the things I need to do in my life. So I go back to that statement I said earlier of, are you saved as a Catholic? And what would you answer to that? I don't really like that answer of, I hope so. It sounds like we don't have enough trust in our God, who's all merciful. So instead, I did a bit of research because I wanted to find something better than I hope so as an answer. And I found something I like that I hope will become your answer. The answer is, I am saved, I'm being saved, and I hope to be saved. If somebody asks you what that means, are you saved? Well, I am saved. Jesus died and rose from the dead for each one of us, for me in particular. So I am saved. He did that for me. But it's up to me to choose to accept that gift, and therefore that means I have to live a life that says I've accepted that gift. So that's the second part of that. I am being saved. I'm living my life, hopefully, according to His teachings and His will, that profession of faith that I make. That's the process of being saved. It takes an entire lifetime. Lillian just beginning on that path of being saved. And I hope to be saved is that it ultimately comes down to God's judgment on us, how we lived our lives based on the circumstances we were given. It's different for each one of us. So that phrase of I hope to be saved is still valid, except we've already been saved by what Jesus did. So let that be your answer if somebody asks you if you're saved. I am saved, I'm being saved, and I hope to be saved.